There are two people, same industry, same city, same decade of experience. One of them earns 3 times more, and somehow the lower earner has built 3 times the net worth. Your first instinct is to explain it away. Inheritance, a lucky investment, a second income nobody mentions. In the next few minutes, that instinct gets dismantled entirely, because the real explanation is a single habit, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. If you've ever gotten a raise and felt relieved for about 30 days before life somehow cost exactly what you now earned, you already know what this feels like from the inside. It doesn't feel like a trap, it feels like progress, a better apartment, a newer car. A vacation that finally matches your title. You were just keeping up. What nobody told you is that keeping up is precisely the mechanism that keeps you behind. And every month that passes without understanding why, your income and your net worth drift further apart, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much more you earn. What separates these two people is not discipline, not a budgeting strategy, not investment sophistication. It's something almost no personal finance content has ever named precisely, because naming it requires admitting that the problem isn't behavioral. It runs deeper than that. Here is what behavioral finance research keeps surfacing, and what almost no one translates into plain language. High earners tend to read income as identity validation. Every salary increase arrives carrying an implicit signal: this is who I am now. And who they are now in the eyes of marketing, their social circle, their own internal self-image, requires a certain kind of car, a certain neighborhood, a certain caliber of weekend. The upgrade isn't a deliberate choice, it's a reflex, an automatic recalibration. Think of a thermostat, but one wired not to temperature, to income. Every time the number climbs, the setting rises, not because they consciously want more. Because the thermostat reads the salary and adjusts the lifestyle to match. This is lifestyle inflation. And it is not primarily a spending problem. It is an identity problem wearing a spending problem's clothes. Most financial advice tries to fix this thermostat through willpower. Hold the setting lower, practice frugality. Build discipline, but here's the thing almost no one is willing to say out loud: restriction fights identity, and identity over time wins every single time. Any attempt at wealth-building habits that begins as self-denial will eventually collapse, because you are not fighting a bad habit. You are fighting a story about who you are. There is a different type of person in this research. Call them the quiet builder. They are not wealthier because they earn less, or because they are unusually frugal, or because they stumbled into some financial windfall nobody talks about. They are wealthier because their thermostat was never wired to income in the first place. The quiet builder doesn't experience the same internal pressure when a raise arrives, because their self-concept was never stored in their salary. Their identity is not invested in what their earnings signal to others. It's invested somewhere else entirely, in something that doesn't demand an upgrade when the number goes up. They treat income the way a craftsman treats raw material. You don't feel more like yourself because you have more wood. You use it to build something. The material is a tool. You are not the material. That distinction sounds almost too clean to be the whole answer, but the psychological gap it represents is enormous. Because without that shift, every wealth-building strategy you attempt, every savings goal, every investment plan, every intention to live below your means will be quietly undermined by something you can't see. A version of yourself that needs the upgrade to feel valid, a self-image assembled by marketing, peer comparison, and years of automatic spending, running silently in the background. This is the part most personal finance content skips entirely, because it forces an uncomfortable admission. You cannot simply decide to spend less, not sustainably, not for years. Not in a way that compounds into real financial independence. Research on spending behavior shows that lifestyle inflation is not primarily a decision, it is a pressure, and pressure over time defeats intention. The person who tries to build wealth through restriction is swimming upstream, and the current gets stronger as income rises. The quiet builder isn't winning through more willpower. They're winning because they already answered a different question, one most people never think to ask. Not how do I spend less, but who am I if not what I earn? That question is the fork, and the answer, once it takes root, changes everything downstream. Now 3 techniques that make this practical, drawn from the intersection of financial minimalism practice, stoic philosophy, and consumer psychology. Each one allows you to begin relocating your identity investment without white-knuckling your way through restriction. The first involves your reference group. Research on social comparison consistently shows that we don't benchmark ourselves against the world, we benchmark against our immediate social orbit. The pressure to upgrade is not universal, it's local. When you deliberately cultivate a smaller, more intentional peer circle, people whose identity is anchored in autonomy, not appearance, the ambient pressure drops without a single act of discipline. Not because your values changed, because the invisible social thermostat recalibrated. The second is what you might call a wealth identity anchor. The brain doesn't resist a purchase because a spreadsheet says no. It resists when a stronger competing identity is already present. The quiet builder holds a concrete, emotionally real image of who they become when capital is preserved and compounded, not a vague notion of security, but a vivid, specific picture of a future self whose power comes from optionality, not optics. When that image is clear enough, it competes with the consumption-based identity at the exact moment of decision. And it wins not through effort, but through desire. You cannot spend your way towards something you want more than the thing you're about to buy. Without these two anchors, here's the pattern. Income rises, lifestyle matches it, the gap between earning and keeping stays constant. Years pass, net worth remains flat, and the worst part isn't the money. It's the persistent, low-grade sense of working harder and harder to maintain a version of yourself that doesn't actually feel like you. The third technique, and the one that makes the previous two permanent, is a deliberate lifestyle set point reset. Researchers studying intentional living communities identified a consistent pattern. Participants who committed to a specific 90-day period of deliberate lifestyle constraint and identity freeze didn't just spend less during those 90 days. Their baseline reset permanently. The lifestyle level they'd previously considered a minimum suddenly felt unnecessary, not through deprivation, through experience. They had inhabited a different identity long enough for it to become their default. The set point moved not through willpower, but through time. The identity freeze isn't punishment. It isn't financial minimalism as an aesthetic. It is a time-limited experiment in discovering who you are when income is removed from the equation entirely. When the upgrade pressure disappears, not because you're resisting it, but because you've stopped reading it as information about yourself. Most people will never attempt this, not because it's difficult, it isn't, because it requires sitting with an uncomfortable question long enough for the answer to reconfigure something real. The goal was never to spend less, it was to become someone who doesn't experience the gap between income and net worth as a sacrifice. Someone for whom a rising salary carries no internal pressure, because the thing that matters most to them cannot be upgraded, cannot be signaled, cannot be purchased. The tide will keep rising. The only question is whether your financial life is built on the shore or anchored somewhere the current can't reach.